it should go live now. Cool. Now we're live. And we have a graduate from NYU Tisch School of Arts and the person who plays Max, and she came in the door, and the prospective client in Choices, Yuyu Kitamura. Woohoo!
Hi.
And we have unintentionally did a matching
Literally from head to toe, a turtleneck and headphones.
Oh my god. Like when we first did the first Skype, we were like, "Oh, we were matching." Okay.
It's the quarantine winter look.
Definitely, definitely. So, do you want to introduce more for yourself or shall we?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. So my name is Yuyu. I am a Japanese actress born and raised in Hong Kong, and I grew up here until I had to go off to university, where I went to New York University's Tisch School of the Arts for acting, and I graduated last year. And since then, I was living in New York for a year, kind of seeing where, my acting career can kind of take off or start. And with sort of the way that life turns around, I came back to Hong Kong in August, and I was really searching for a theater community. And it just so happened that Aurora Theatre had posted their auditions for the CNC Festival. So the timing was really miraculous.
Wow.
And it made me, I was searching for a theater community here, and I found one quite easily. And I think if you search for it, you can definitely find it in Hong Kong.
Mm.
Um, and it was great. And after, doing the whole audition process and slowly getting to see sort of who the players were at Aurora Theatre, it was great and lovely. And then the festival happened, and here we are.
And I was gonna discuss this with you later, but how did you feel watching your two plays? Cause I mean, like, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, the two plays they're both comedies, and I think it was wonderful because, both of them had wonderful cast and directors and writers, and we were all really collaborative, and the rehearsal process was so interesting doing it all online. And actually, when it came down to the premiere of it, it was so nice that Nicole was able to host us in, a way where it was safe for everybody.
Mm.
And it finally made sense that, all these different plays were happening at the same time, and we all collectively, those who could, came together and watched it. And I felt that sense of community, and I felt like this was almost like an ensemble piece for everybody. But they were all so fun to watch together, and it was really fun watching myself back and seeing what the final production kind of looks like. So that was great.
Yeah, and it was also weird to see people for the first time that you worked with on Zoom, and you
Yeah.
finally see them in person. You're like, oh, you're actually human, you
Yeah.
know?
Choices. Kim, who is the other actress in it, and she's great, but she's currently in the States. And
Mm.
so when I finally got to see Gael in person, I was like, oh my God, I want to give you a hug. Like, it felt like such a wonderful feeling to like put a physical face and body to like who I've been seeing virtually.
And let's go to transition to our interview of choices. Like,
Hmm.
how did you feel personally relating to the story of choices, since it's about like a student that's
Hmm.
alone kind of
Yeah.
situation, and like
Hmm.
you I mean, yes, I'm really bad at
Yeah.
interviews, but yes.
No, no, no. So when we first kind of got sent a couple of plays that we did, I immediately gravitated towards choices. I thought it was such
Mm.
an interesting and really like relatable story in the context of what students are currently going through, where student debt is a real issue, and it is hard and it is taxing, and to think of like the future generations to come and how expensive education is. I was immediately intrigued and I wanted to do the play. And it's also a dark comedy. So it has this like weird, almost like Black Mirror sense to it. Um, and it's funny and it's gritty, and it tackles an issue, I think, in a very interesting lens of coming from almost like a dystopian, like, what if this is the future of like, this is how expensive education is. And I'm not going to give away what happens at the end. But I thought like going through the play and like finding those moments of like where is it hard for my character? Where is it somewhat intriguing for this, concept that like I might be doing? And I think Choices was really wonderful to work on.
Definitely, because I mean, we're both. I mean, you're a graduate, but I'm still a student, and just dealing with the whole like international student fee is
Oh my God,
crazy, and it's
it is.
so expensive that, like, how can people pay off this
Hmm.
everything? And it's just, yeah, and the deal. I mean, would you ever want to make this deal? If
Yes.
would
So
you? Ooh.
I mean, NYU is an insanely
Oh
expensive school to
yeah.
begin with, and so I'm very grateful for the education that I had.
Mm,
And even though, majority of the school is somewhat perceived that like everybody is wealthy, that's often not the case.
mm,
And so like going through this play and like really understanding and like learning and reading about what people who do face incredible student debt loans, what that's like. Would I do it? Probably. Would I do this deal that we're talking about? Maybe not, because I think that, oh, I don't want to give away what happens, but I personally don't think I would, but I can also see myself being very almost like intrigued and like it feels like I was opening Pandora's box. Like this is
oh.
what it could be like this is what my life could be like.
Mm,
And I can see how this weird crazy futuristic concept could be real one day. Like maybe.
yeah, having what? Oh wait, I
I
shouldn't say more. No, I
I
don't.
know. Okay, people have to go watch it themselves. You
Yeah,
have to make the
yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
Make the choice and watch
That
it.
was like such a smooth plug-in.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what really was my favorite part about that play, like aside from the play itself and being so fun, I loved that the cast and the director we were all women, we were all female, creatives
Mm,
working on this play together. And I think that energy that brings into this like experience it's so enriching as someone who's in the arts.
yeah, cause like right. I mean, I'm not so sure about the theater industry in America, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can tell by Hollywood how like woman doesn't have much of a voice sometimes. I mean, same goes for like Asian Americans, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because like
Mm-hmm.
Asian Americans, like it's only been recently erupting in terms of like Crazy Rich Asians and
Mm-hmm.
Parasite, and
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to see that there is like a growth, and then we can make it bigger later
Mm-hmm.
after COVID, of course,
Yeah.
because you know.
I think in the theater community, especially, like I can only speak for New York,
Mm,
but what was very commercially viable, so many of the productions that were quote unquote successful, um, there is a limited number of characters for minorities, for people of color, for women. And it's not just like the play itself, but it's people who are behind the scenes.
mm,
So like the directors, the writers, the costume designers, the lighting people, like we just need, I think, this whole conversation about diversity, I don't think just stems from like who we see, but it's also like who helped
yeah.
make everything. And so I think, you know, right now we are sort of like at the forefront of everything and like we can see what it can be. And I really hope that we follow through with that.
I think a good example is Mulan because like Mulan, yes, it has
Yeah.
like Asian actors, but
Yeah.
behind that they're all
It was
white.
not. And that's why
Yeah.
you can quote me. I didn't enjoy Mulan. I thought it was kind of like something was
I didn't
missing.
watch it. Is it that bad?
Ah, I have many thoughts about that one, but yeah, I just think there was a lot of missed opportunity for Mulan. It could have been
Mm.
chef's kiss brilliant, but it kind of flopped.
Oh, that's a shame. I mean, I wasn't planning to watch it later anyway because the reviews are terrible from what I'm hearing. But let's move on to She Came in the Door. Now, how did it feel with your role in She Came in the Door compared to Choices? Because they were both very
Yep.
different characters. Like,
Yes.
Like, how did you approach it differently, or did you do anything differently, or?
Yeah, I think for She Came in the Door, I played Max, and Max found herself in the situation where she moved in with her boyfriend during quarantine, and they're now figuring out or coming to the senses that like maybe it wasn't the best idea. And it's so funny because I know people who did that during quarantine. Like they moved in together, and whether it was good or for bad, it happened, and it does happen. So it felt very relevant in the now because it's about
Mm.
COVID. It's about this situation between this couple and a friend, and you learn in this play that there are like different relationships going on between the three of them. And I think what was so like wonderful about She Came in the Door is that the three actors, we were all in Hong Kong, so we were able to find a way to like meet and like run through the scene and like read together,
That's
which I think is
good.
it is helpful. And it was really wonderful to actually like meet them and like get to know them a little bit before this project went live. um, but also She Came in the Door, it it felt not just relevant, but it felt like I could understand these characters and where they're coming from. And I could see all sides of their stories and how hard it can be just to be like isolated or to be with people during this time. And like, we often overlook the stresses of what COVID is actually, I think, doing to us. We're kind of like, yeah, this is a phase, like, we'll get through it. But like, it's okay to actually sit and feel and like take time to think about things and like take a moment for yourself and take a moment for other people. Um, and the way that the two directors for these two plays, they kind of worked on it differently. So
Mm.
it felt very much like a completely isolated project to choices. Um, if that makes sense.
Kinda. I mean,
Yeah.
but
So like I would say that Gael worked a lot on the text and like the physicality
mm,
and the beats, and the way that Faith worked on it was very inside out. Like, what does the character
mm,
think? What is the psychology behind this? How do you think this will relate to these relationships that she's talking to her friend and her boyfriend, and like what does that mean? How does she feel? What's going through her mind? And so like when you're thinking about it psychologically, I found myself being like, okay, like if this was me, like would I do it? It's easier to put myself in that situation because it's something that's like currently relevant.
yeah. I mean, what did you think about the two directing approaches? Which one did you prefer
Mm.
more? The more emotional kind, or the more like physical kind of body language kind? Like, what do you
I
think?
I don't think that one was better than the other. I think they were both just very different,
Mm,
um, and different for the right reasons. And I always find it so intriguing when I work with directors of like what their approach and how they like to, help their actors
mm.
work through scenes. Um, they were both different, and now they're both like in my toolbox. So if I ever wanted to give directing a shot, I have their
Ooh.
exercises and like what they did, and I think that that was really helpful. And they were both so, they were always on top of it, and they were always willing to collaborate, and they were always willing to sort of find moments that made sense to them, made sense and gave justice to what the writer was wanting to portray, and
Mm.
also what the actors felt like was needed in the scene.
Wow. I
Hmm.
mean, I had to direct also two plays, so I understand that
Hmm.
completely in terms of like how to approach actors, and also like there are times that like however I would do like the act like directing would also differentiate between actors, because there's some actors that want to just
Hmm.
go off by themselves and then think of how they want to
Yeah.
do the rehearsals, and there's some actors that are willing to take in every note and then redo again and again and again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I experienced that for CNC, and it was really nice. And if you do have a chance of doing if you do want to be a director someday, please do. It's actually a fun job.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think in this day and age, you find everyone kind of doing a little bit of everything. And
Mm,
I think that's so important and to be so like multiversed almost in the art world.
yeah, give a go. And how did you? I mean, like you explained a lot about She Came in the Door and how you felt. But how did you feel in terms of like the directions or like your team and choices then?
My team and choices.
Yeah.
I loved working with the women and for choices, and I think it's funny because for choices, my other actor was in the States.
Mm.
And then for She Came in the Door, the director was in the States. So it really did
Oh.
feel like a global production because like
Mm.
there were people in my cast and crew that weren't, we weren't all in the same time zone. So like some days we had to work earlier and some nights later.
Mm.
Um, but overall, I think everyone was super on top of it and everyone was willing to, either give way or ask for some adjustments for like how their rehearsal process went. So it very much felt like a community of actors and creatives working together.
That's really nice to hear. I mean, I feel like it's the same for everyone else in CNC. Like, we try to cooperate together and just try to make a
Yeah,
peace for the pandemic, because pandemic had already like ruined a lot of plans for us, isn't it?
I know. And it's so, which, like to your point, like the pandemic really, as we all know, hit many industries. And I
Mm,
think for theater, it hit something so hard and so painful because live performance can't happen anymore.
yeah.
And, we do get, our TV and our movies streamed to us now, and it's so easy, but there's something so valuable in live performance and being together and like the whole process from like rehearsal to the show to like after. Um, and I think if anything, it made me realize like how much, how like even though we're all craving to go back into the live space, there's different avenues that we can take. And I think Aurora Theatre did a great job, especially in Hong Kong, being like at the forefront of doing live online theater.
Well, we gotta make something happen, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, girl.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on the topic of COVID, what
Yeah.
plans were canceled due to COVID for you personally?
Yeah. It was really rough because when COVID first hit, I was still in New York.
Oh.
And like I think what was really hard about 2020 for me is my goal in the States at 2020 during 2020 was to figure out a way to get another type of visa. And
Mm.
the current visa that I was on was set to expire um, in the end of summer of 2020. And so once COVID hit, I kind of had 6 months where I couldn't do it. Well, the world couldn't do anything,
Yeah.
but those 6 months for me were really important because I had to sort of continue with my professional work and my career and really try to like showcase something of myself, and I couldn't.
Mm.
So it was hard just kind of like digesting that in like the city that I love so dearly to my heart. I love being in New York, and I think New York really shaped me as both the artist and the woman that I am and want to be. And I think there's so much culture and there's so many opportunities in New York. Um, there's a lot happening in America right now, but
Yeah.
I, my heart is big, wide, and open for New York City. Um, but 2020 has been tough, but you know what? We always persevere. We find ways to adjust and we'll find different avenues to go down. And I think if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and I'll find my way back there.
And did you have, I mean, when COVID is over, do you have any plans going back to New York or being able to
Mhm.
like get your credentials to be able to
Yeah.
go back?
I mean, hopefully, I think what I'm trying to do in Hong Kong is kind of that. So to continue building my portfolio here.
Mm.
Uh, and, you know, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think ultimately I will be back there, just not right now. And I'm okay with that because Hong Kong is doing a great job in maintaining, the
Yeah.
safety of our people here.
Although fourth wave is not a good thing right now.
No, 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 it is not. But you know what? Uh, there's only so much we can talk about the fourth wave.
Because you were
So,
very optimistic when you were talking about Hong Kong, and I was like, not right now though.
mm, I mean, this is what a global pandemic is. It's just like this constant swing of the pendulum, and hopefully, I believe that the people here know what they're doing, and I'm not as afraid because the numbers in America were just so drastically insane.
Yeah, it is. God. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you're safe here in Hong Kong.
Thank you.
And I would like to talk more about your background and
Yeah.
your starting point of wanting to do acting. So, what inspired you to do acting?
Yeah, so I people are like, I did this role and I really enjoyed it. Like I da da da. But I never had this like one moment or one role that changed my life that put me on this path of wanting to pursue the arts. I think ultimately, whenever I was finding myself acting or performing or telling stories, it just made me really happy and gave me a sense of joy that I didn't find in any other thing. And
Mm.
I think the wonderful thing about being young and like being a child and having your mind run off, this naivety that like I really could do whatever I put my mind to, and my parents and my family are super supportive of that.
Oh yeah, same. Like my parents are very supportive of me doing theater too, and I think that's the nice thing of our, like the current Asian parents that are now slowly more supportive of
Yeah,
people doing the art industry. Because I know
completely.
if they're like 10 years older, they wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that says a lot. And I
Mm,
think without their support, kind of pursuing this passion, it would be very difficult.
yeah.
Um, And so I found myself being really happy whenever I was on stage or whenever I was, even just performing and doing little like presentations in class or whatever. Um, and so by the time it came down to sort of starting to think about what my future would look like in my teenage years,
Mm.
I was like, oh, well, I like acting. I really want to do this. I want to do it for the rest of my life if I can. Um, and I don't know if I don't know if my path is something that sounds so cliche. It's kind of aggressive. But I think if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And like, I've always strived to do the best that I can. And like, I got into my dream school to pursue my dream. And and I think that is really sort of put me on this path that I keep talking about.
Well, I do hope that you're able to continue doing more acting in the future, and
Yeah.
I hope I get to see you do more shows or theater or film.
Likewise, likewise.
Thank you. And I would like, anyway. So I have seen your bio because I had worked on everyone's bio.
Yes.
I noticed that you worked on scripted podcasts, theater, and independent shorts. Now, do you want to explain like how did you explore? Because like I know there's some people that they just go to theater, but what made you
Mhm,
explore more of like other mediums of art
mhm.
to just figure yourself on what you can do?
Yeah, I think I've always had a natural curiosity in a lot of mediums. Like they're all under the bracket of acting, but they're all
Mm.
very different in their own right. I would say that theater, I was trained in theater at school. So my first 2 years at NYU, it was all theater training, and I love watching live theater. It's
Mm.
something that I think has always connected me to wanting to be an actor. And then eventually, my last 2 years of my education, I focused on screen acting. I love movies and TV shows, and I hopefully one day want to pursue that. And so in New York, there's an ample amount of creative people always trying to produce things and make things. And there's so many students that come to New York to study things. So you have all these different avenues and opportunities to explore. And I think for me, a reason why I want to explore so many is because I want to kind of see what acting and like the creative medium of film and TV and voiceover work. And like, I want to see all of it. I want to learn all of it because from different mediums, I can pick things that I enjoy. I can find work in different ways. Um, and ultimately, like, my long-term dream is to one day open a production studio of mine and kind of do a little bit of everything. And so I think, if there's an opportunity to learn, why not learn? I don't understand. For me personally, like I would never want to box myself in one thing. I want to
Mm.
see how many different things I can kind of put my hands on
I
to
think
understand, what the industry is as a large.
And I think that's the beauty of being in our 20s, because
Hmm.
we just love to explore around and see what's good, what's not, or what's hot, what's not, you
Yeah.
know. And your goal, your long-term goal of having a production company is also my goal too, long-term too. Like I also want
Yeah.
to make my own theater company where I mean hopefully like one where it's like more diverse and that we can just open for new actors or directors and
Yes.
just bring them
Yes.
in on their new stuff. And
Completely.
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not like a oh, it's not a dream that I mean, it's a still an approachable dream, I
Yeah,
think.
completely. And like
Yeah.
even if it wasn't so like who's to say that you can't do it? I think you can do anything that you put your mind to. If you really think there's something you can do it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I
You
totally agree.
I'm excited for you. I want to see what you come up with.
Maybe we can collab one day and then just
Oh
make
my
our
gosh, we
own.
should.
Yes.
We should.
Anyway,
Let's do it.
shall we talk more about the independent shorts that you were in? Because
Yeah.
I watched a bit. I watched the whole thing. Um, it's called Clickbait that you were
Yes.
in. Now, do you want
Yes.
to explain more about what is it about?
Sure. Was written by Anna Mikami, who is also an NYU grad, and she is, I think, a year or two older than I am. And a mutual friend put us in touch together, where she wrote and directed and starred in her own first short, which I think is amazing. And Clickbait went on to premiere at the Asian International Film Festival in New York, Asian Film
Ooh.
Festival in New York. But it centers around sort of like the third culture world for international
Mm.
kids in Hong Kong. Um, and, what does that mean to go to an international school? How does being young and in your teens and like what is the social dynamic of that? And I think Hong Kong has a very interesting culture around international school kids,
Yeah.
for both the good and the bad. And I think Anna's film highlights some of it, and it does it in a very nuanced way, and it kind of brings you into this world, and it's great.
Yeah, cause like when I saw, I was like, I mean, I couldn't. I mean, from my, I don't want to say I relate to it totally.
Yeah.
I'd never done underage drinking, or underage
Good.
gold
Yeah.
clubbing. I mean, I know a good amount of people from my school that went,
Mhm.
and I know the type of like you know the type of people that
Yeah.
does these, and like there's so many dramas going around them, and it just makes sense that like they've been doing a lot, and then like they know they've been I mean, like also like I feel like just rumors and also that gossip moments in like the
Mhm.
bathroom is so relatable because like everybody does that in general, and
Yeah.
it's just like especially like online, like just
And
like
you see, yeah, how social media has also kind of taken over
yeah,
for people like for this generation, for our generation, for the current one. Um, but it's also such an interesting way of growing up because I don't know about you, but I personally kind of had and still am trying to figure out my own identity and like where I fit in
oh
and who
same.
I am. Because, my parents are both Japanese and I am
Mm.
Japanese, but I grew up in Hong Kong and went to an international school, but then moved to the US and then like kind of grew up into an adult there. And
Mm.
so like a part of me is figuring out, my culture, then my upbringing, and then who I want to be. And it's all these different layers. And I can see, how it influences my work, and I can see how it will influence my work one day and like the stories that I want to tell from it. But I don't know. How about
I
you?
mean, I'd say the same too. I remember like when I went to uni as my first
Hmm.
year, and then people are been asking like, so where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I mean, like for you must be
Yeah.
harder because like you say you're Japanese, but you don't live in Japan, but you live in Hong Kong, and it's just like that
Yeah. And
whole
like
like,
the worst, I would get this every my first year too. Every time I met someone new, they were like, "Oh, how is your English so
oh my
good?"
god, yes,
And
oh
I
I
was
hate
like,
that.
okay, well, firstly, we live in the 21st century where like we have media all around us. Secondly, like, why do you assume that my English has to be broken for me to come from somewhere? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of messed up. And it, it definitely, like, it was a culture shock for me to
Mm.
be like, oh, so people who aren't from where I'm from are very, oblivious. And that's okay. Like, going to college or moving places and meeting new people is a whole process.
Yeah. And
But I was just like
I
shocked.
was so shocked too, and also like I realized how like when I was doing my own essays and stuff for like my
Hmm.
own uni, I realized I write better English than other people, and I was like, oh, okay. And they're all like British, and I'm just like, okay. But I also felt the whole racism in being in another country too, because like it's different, because like in Hong Kong, like they don't really know if you're like Japanese or Korean in Hong Kong. So
Yeah.
there's not much of like racism in that. I mean, they will be like, oh, Japanese, oh, Korean. Like they see it in
Yeah.
a nice, brighter light. But in another country, like I don't know about New York, but I remember in the UK, like I remember it was my first day, and I was in the toilet, and then this cleaner was like, hey, are you with the Chinese group in the lobby? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't belong to any group yet. I just came here, so
Yeah. Oh,
I was like, okay, thanks. And that was like, I
yeah.
mean, there was more, but still, that was just one of it. I mean, how about you? How about racism in New York?
New York is great in the sense that it is a huge culture pot. Like you have so many different people from all over the world coming to New
Mm.
York. So like in Hong Kong, where the case is like we look like the majority, right? So
Yeah.
like it's easy for us to fit in,
Mm.
whereas in the States it's a little bit difficult. In New York, it wasn't as hard as it could be elsewhere in the States, but I think it was very apparent for me after. So I moved to New York in 2015, so Obama was still president.
Nice.
And then my second year was when Trump got elected, and you felt the immediate shift
Oof.
in the city. And that moment really changed how people, not everyone obviously, but
Mm.
you can see it more apparent, and
Oh.
it's more they're not afraid to suddenly say things that are very racist, or in the interactions that you would have, like people seem to be more openly against you. Like I was
Mm.
outside my dorm one day, and there were two men that were drunk and approached me, and I was like, "No, like I'm okay." And I'm like, "No, like I don't want to talk to you." And the first thing they said to me was, "Go back to China." And they called me a chink, and I was like, "Wow, this is what, America can be." And like, I also should never take anything for granted. And like,
Mm.
it's eye-opening to experience it.
Yeah.
And I don't wish it on anybody, but I think once you do, you understand that like this is real in the world. And
Yeah.
like it can be worse for other people, and it is worse for other people.
Yes.
So I should understand my privilege and my safety,
Mm.
and always treat people with utmost kindness.
It's just so weird that like people always say like, oh, Americans are the most racist country, but they don't understand there's also like what may like Britons are also just as racist too,
Yeah.
and then Australians. I don't know about Australians, but then they could be. But it's just the white community, like they're the most privileged, but they can be the most ignorant sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to then, you know, be creating art that serves people that you feel aren't represented well.
Mm.
I think that's why hearing about your production company and my production company, and like the hope that like we're just two people with dreams, and there are
Yeah.
people in the world that are doing it and are doing it so wonderfully well. Like I look up to Sandra Oh a lot.
Yes.
She was iconic in Grey's Anatomy, and she's now in Killing Eve, and she's been in a lot of theater. She's been in theater. She's done theater, and she's been in films. But I was recently listening to a podcast where she was talking about how she is now in her stage of her career helping other Asian people come to life in this industry, and like
Wow.
she's trying to help, vouch for them and like be a mentor in some capacity. And I think it's women like her that I'm like I look up to, and I would one day love to work with you.
Oh my
um
God, of course. One day I would.
yeah.
Well, I think everyone would love to work with Sandra Oh at some
Oh
point.
my God, I just want to be in the same room with her. I just want to like slightly hold her hand and be like,
Holding her
Take me
hand.
with you.
I do want to meet Aquafina one day.
Oh, she seems like a very cool, like, oh, woman who's just like so creatively just like alive.
Yeah, I want to watch her film. I don't remember the name. Um, it's like where she goes to China and then
Oh,
like,
farewell.
yes,
The
I want to
farewell.
watch that
It's
one.
really good. It's
Really,
really good. It's her in a dramatic role. Um,
yeah,
and so you see that she is just like such a talented woman and
yeah.
she can do it all. And she raps and she's funny and she's like she has a cool style.
And she's like an
Oh,
influencer too. Like she's on her game in the Instagram. So,
yeah.
oh, one
Wonderful.
day, just one day. Hopefully, maybe one day, maybe Sandra Oh and like Aquafina can be watching this interview, be like, "Ooh, these girls are cool." Just saying.
In matching turtlenecks, talking about it.
And also, like, shall we move on to the topic of like identity crisis? Like, how do you? I mean, When did you start feeling this identity crisis? Because I felt it already, um, back in primary when like I was like I don't know enough Korean and I don't know enough Canto and I
Hmm.
only knew
Hmm.
English well and people are like why you cannot speak the other Asian languages and yet you
Yes.
can only speak like the one that you just learned from school and I was like
Yes, I completely
right
understand.
right
I mean, I went to an international school all my life, so English is my first language.
mm,
But I speak Japanese with my mom,
mm,
and my dad and I speak in English. But for my mom, I think she was so afraid of losing her culture and her heritage with her kids because
mm.
my mom grew up in Japan, whereas my dad grew up in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So it felt very much to her like her own children aren't grasping like how beautiful Japanese
Mm.
culture is. Like it wasn't like I was neglecting it or I didn't want to be part of it. I just wasn't
Exposed
like
to it.
my yeah, my community here was an international community.
Mm.
And so like you, like I didn't speak Japanese like I spoke it conversationally, but I couldn't read or write. So when people would
Mm.
be like, "Oh my God, like can you like write this for me?" I would be like, "I don't know how to. I'm so sorry." And then they're like, "Oh, so you grew up in like Hong Kong. Why can't you speak Cantonese?" And I was like, yeah, like I understand that's a very valid statement and I can't. And so I didn't ever know like where to call home.
Mm.
Like home, I'm Japanese, but home is in Japan, but I'm from Hong Kong, but I don't know how to speak Cantonese. And then I moved to New York and I find myself loving New York, but like I'm not American. So like where and
Yeah.
am I? And I think, yeah, I was just like, I don't know who I am. And I had this moment where I was
Oh.
like, I don't know. And so I started writing and I found myself writing a lot of poetry. And
Wow.
so that's another passion of mine is writing poetry. Um, and I think ultimately, like what I realized out of this whole identity crisis is that like whenever I'm struggling and I find myself needing to express myself, it's always in some form of like art,
Of
which
course.
sounds so pretentious. I'm like, well, I hate saying that. Um, so pretentious of me. But like I enjoy expressing myself through creative mediums, which I think some people are just wired that way. Some people,
Mm.
love to go on like endless runs. Some people like to express themselves through cooking. Some people like to, actually talk to people about it. Like, and so I just found myself always like putting it into something that I'm doing creatively.
I think art does have this kind of like open source of just making open outlet to just let you
Mhm.
like reflect on yourself sometimes like just like
Yeah.
I mean sometimes it may be hard to like check on your identity when you do art because like it will make you even question more or make you even more confused like
But
I
isn't that
it
great?
is
Isn't
great
that
it
great?
is
Like you
great
always have questions and like you're always looking for an answer. So it means that you're always somewhat searching for something.
but then in the end I think it's just for up to us to accept ourselves for who we are and we're
Yeah.
kind of different from others and they won't understand and we'll just have to accept that.
Yeah. And I used to think that like oh, I'm so alone in this identity crisis. But here you are telling me something so similar that I went through. And
Yeah.
I think it might just be a case that like Hong Kong is such a special place like that. But I think also globally, like globalization is such a real thing where like
Mm.
people are moving around a lot and like finding themselves in new homes. And
Mm.
um, I think it's more common than we think.
Yeah, it
And I
is.
think there's such a big third culture kid community out there.
And I'm glad to see that because like I thought like it's gonna be something that only one or like two or three people like you and me, but there's actually a good amount, and I'm just like happy to know that there's more people, you
Yeah.
know. So I'm
So
glad.
hopefully we'll all find a way to express ourselves and see ourselves on TV with the stories that we can relate to.
Definitely, like let's have more stuff like clickbait, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, let's talk about your favorites in terms like what was your favorite production that you were in?
Yeah, so I think recently, like one of my favorite things that I worked on was a short film that is currently in the process and maybe going to be a feature, but it's called
Ooh.
Electable.
Okay.
And I got to work on it and at the starting stages of like what the short film was, and it's directed and written by Leanne Kay, who's in New York, and she is an amazing writer director, and she is an Asian American woman telling Asian American stories. And the story Electable centers around Quinn Chin, who she is in high school, and she is helping her friend run for student class president, but realizes that she has her own voice and she can tell her own stories and also run for the title of student class
That
president.
sounds so
Um,
nice.
yeah, working with Leanne was such a great experience because not only is she like a young and upcoming director writer, but she's also Asian. So the stories that she was telling were relatable. I felt seen. I felt safe working with Leanne, and ultimately, like she made such an amazing short film, and she's doing great things for herself. So I'm really happy for her and her success. But working with her made me realize how important it is to uplift other people like you, and how needed a community like that is on projects sometimes. Like I don't ever want to just be a diversity check on a project. I don't want to
Mm.
feel like I'm there for, someone to just check off their list. Like I want to feel accepted and I want to feel like I'm working with you in
Wow.
that sense. So working with Leanne was such an eye-opening and wonderful experience.
Wow, that's actually. I mean, I understand like the check-in because like I remember in my uni there was this like the third years or the final years and they have to do this kind of major project thing, and then there was this group that was like, oh, we need diverse people in it, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, and then there was like a bunch of people and I joined in too, and I feel like the reason why I got into that company is because I'm Asian,
Mm.
and it's just weird the fact that it's because I'm diverse they made me
Yeah.
in, not because of like my skills but just my diverse, and
Yeah.
it's just weird, and I understand that, and I'm glad for you that you have like a more accepting community, but
Hmm.
I understand also the other spectrum where like they just want to have the diversity check, and
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's not a good feeling. I mean, it was nice
It,
to work with them, I guess. I mean, like it was nice in terms of like being able to bring up racism in the play, and then like being able to
hmm
show the
hmm
diversity and also like the dystopian part. But then other than that,
Yeah.
like just the fact that I got accepted just for my diversity was not a nice thought, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully, moving forward on my own projects one day when I write, direct, star, produce, do all of it.
One
I
woman
hope
show, yes.
one woman show. I hope to uplift other people and like bring other communities together, especially my Asian brothers and sisters out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really nice. And
Yeah.
shall we move on to which actors do you look up to? We discussed Sandra Oh
We talked
already.
about Sandra Oh a little bit, but Reese Witherspoon is doing
Yes.
great
Yes. Oh
stuff.
my
And
god.
she's so smart. Like,
Yes.
she has her own production company and she reads a lot of books, that
Oh
woman.
my
So
god.
any book that she feels showcases like women showcases like an amazing story. She just like buys the rights to it and then she's like, I'll just do it myself. Like I don't need to be waiting for people to call me. I'll just call myself and do it myself and like bring together all these amazing people and do a project. So I think what she's doing is amazing. I love what Saoirse Ronan's been doing.
Gone
She does a
Girl. Wait, no, no, no,
uh,
no.
Lady
The
Bird,
woman. I forgot.
Lady Bird, Little
Yes,
Women.
Little Woman.
Yeah, like over her career, she's told so many. Like I was thinking about this the other day after reading an article, but the article was saying how like she over her career, so she kind of blossomed out of The Lovely Bones, which was
Mm.
like an amazing movie. But since then, she's done a lot of like coming of age films because she sparked when she was a teenager and she's now in her like 20s. But she's done a lot of coming of age films, but they're all so different. And
Yeah.
the way she is almost like a chameleon in like those movies, although they all have an overarching theme of coming of age, she just showcases different stories so beautifully and so well. She's just like so talented and like a style icon and
Yes.
yeah, and she's like killing it. So I think she's also amazing.
I want to talk more about Reese Witherspoon because like I remember she did a speech of like how she started talking about Legally Blonde and how like there's this kind of like a stereotypical thing for girls that always ask like always in the movies be like, what do we do now to the lead male
Yeah.
character, but then to be honest, we know what we're gonna do because us
Yeah.
girls, we're independent, strong women that know what
Oh,
to
yeah.
do. And Reese Witherspoon talked more about how she had made a production company, and
hmm
she was the one who helped produce two plays, Gone Girl and Wild. And the fact that she like people kept saying to her like how like she shouldn't start it, it's gonna cost a lot, but then that was like $1 billion business, $1 million
Yeah.
business right there, and then everybody was like ooh. And then the fact that she has now more I don't remember what are her upcoming ones, but then the fact that she could do that is just so
Mm.
inspiring to see that.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
Right. And I think what she is doing shows the industry that like women can run businesses.
yeah.
Women are viable sources of income. People want to see these stories. Like, why are we holding back? Like, she
Yeah.
is a great case study for that. And I think not only is she cultivating work for herself and she's being smart about it, she is highlighting that there is a need for diversity on all aspects, right?
Yeah.
Like women, people of color, stories, different types of stories. Like, and after just like, I'm inspired by her.
Yeah.
I can see that how like people have been inspired and are already doing that. Like Margot Robbie has her own production company and is
No,
doing great.
really.
Yeah, she does. And like she's doing things for herself too. And like it just showcases how like men have been running the industry for so long and it's time for a shakeup and it's time and I think the world is ready for more women to tell their stories and to tell their truth.
Yeah, and I think that goes for the same for Asian Americans too, because we're ready to showcase that too.
Asians in general, like across the board.
Yeah,
Like we don't,
definitely.
you know what I mean? Like we don't need to just be in America.
Yeah, I don't know why I
And
said
like
Asian Americans, but
no,
yes.
no, no, no. And I don't mean to like argue or like rebuttal you on that case, but it's just like Korea's hitting it off.
Oh
Japan's doing great
yeah.
films. Like we're we're getting there.
I
We're getting
remember
there.
seeing so many people interviewing like the director of Parasite and then like the
So,
hit
uh,
hit K-pop group BTS. Like whenever American interviewers ask them like, oh, so what English songs or like, oh, do you know any English movies and that kind of stuff, and they're like, is that a question?
like honestly, my favorite thing about 2020 was the Oscars when Bong Joon-ho said that the Oscars were a local film festival and not an international one. And then he went on that night to just like sweep all the awards and he was like, I'm gonna drink a lot tonight. Like that's my favorite moment. Like he has never pigeonholed himself in something. Like they like no one in Parasite could have predicted the global
No.
impact of that movie. And he was just trying to tell a story that he knew of, that he wanted to create, that he thought was impactful to his community, and like see the impact that it made, like he's great. And I think more people are realizing that like we can watch movies with subtitles. Like it's okay, guys. Like
It's so normal to watch subtitles in Korea, and I watch subtitles with
yeah,
everything.
right? Like I think also growing up where you're exposed to different types of cultures and
Yeah.
mediums, like yes, the West makes a lot of things, and but so does everywhere else. We just need to like open ourselves to those worlds.
Yeah, and I think like nowadays like people are only are just liking Studio Ghibli. I love it too, and I grew up with
love
it. And the fact that
yeah.
people only realize how good they are now is just like, where did you go? How why? You know?
I love Hayao Miyazaki and his work, and like
Yes,
that, yeah. Great stuff, even for adults, not just for kids, more for
definitely. Do you have
adults.
a favorite one?
I love growing up, I watched a lot of
Mm,
Totoro, My Neighbor
yes.
Totoro. Spirited Away is a classic.
Mm.
But other than that, there was one about what Naushka, the princess
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I
for
haven't.
this like weird planet. Like that was always in my mind as a child. Now I can't remember the name of it, but it'll come back to me.
I don't think I've watched it yet, but I have watched Kiki's Delivery Service.
Oh
That was
yeah,
very
blah.
cute.
That was very cute, very
And
cute.
House Moving Castle.
Oh, that was amazing. The
Yes.
the visual animation, I guess what you would call, just like the way that the objects move, the food moves.
Mm.
Great. Yeah, so people should expose themselves to foreign films because foreign films are also where it's at.
Yeah, and they know how to make food look so good in animations.
I'm over this real life food. I want anime.
Yeah. Now we're kind of in the closing part of the
Mhm.
interview. Do you have any final things in terms of like any plugins or like why people should watch you in CNC and She Came in the Door?
Yeah, I think overall, like what this festival has really showcased is that there's both a need for the creative people in the audience that like we want this type of content out there right now, especially now more than ever. And it's, you know, supporting local theaters, supporting theater communities, supporting act like artists and creatives during this time is really important and valuable, not only because the industry is suffering,
Mm.
but because like people don't understand sometimes that like when you're bored, you go to TV and movies. When you want to hear a song that uplifts you, you go to music. When you're trying to get lost, you might read a book or look at a painting. Like people need art in their lives.
Mm.
And so having a community like Aurora and like the work that Aurora does, especially like in Hong Kong
Yeah.
and communities globally, you know, you might not know how much you need it until you need it, and you don't want to be late on the bandwagon. So definitely check out Aurora Theatre. You can always find my work at yuyukit.com or yuyukit on Instagram. I always post things about my updates and the future work I do.
Ooh.
And overall, like, I want to thank you guys for, producing this and putting this together. Your hard work is not missed, and it is very appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting this interview. It was really nice talking
Thank
to
you
you
for
about
having me.
the whole like American like Asian community third world culture and like Reese
Mhm.
Witherspoon, Sandra Oh, everything. Yes.
Well, I'll see you again. Maybe we can match again and wear turtlenecks.
Yeah, and also maybe beside turtlenecks, let's also like make our own production company or
Let's
collab, you
do it.
know?
Let's do
Now
it.
I'm